Evening, everybody. This is going to be a fun beer review. I'm actually beta testing a yeast for a yeast company called Southyeast Labs out of Greenville, South Carolina. The gentleman's name is David Thornton. He also has a brewery in South Carolina called Carolina Barn House. He's making a lot of Belgian ales, a lot of sour Brett, all kinds of interesting beers down there. Now, what makes his yeast lab different than most of the other yeast labs is that everything he has is wild caught. Most of the yeast labs will culture from breweries, from Europe, or from beers, or from other yeast companies. There's actually you can't have a patent on yeast unless it's a hybrid or a GMO yeast. But he actually captures yeast, which is really difficult to do. Out of the most of the yeast that you catch can't attenuate wort, and the ones that do, he says about 10% of them will give you desirable results. So he sent me a beta yeast that he's trialing. It's was cultured from a bee. This is the TN-Bee-2 yeast, and I made a Belgian pale ale. It's a simple recipe, just 7 pounds of pale ale, or pale malt, Belgian malt, 3 pounds of wheat, malted wheat, 8 ounces of honey malt. I know a little bit corny to use honey malt, but I couldn't resist. So 8 ounces of flaked barley and 8 ounces of acid malt for pH. I did not add lactic acid to my mash, David. 1 ounce of pearl at 60 minutes and an ounce of Saaz at flame out. So let's get into it. So pours a light copper orange with a slightly off-white, pretty thick 1.5 finger head. Fairly tight bubbles, a little bit of big bubbles also. The head does tend to stick around. You got the carbonation pretty good on it for the style. Get the aroma on this yeast culture from bees in South Carolina, or Tennessee. I'm sorry, Tennessee. So the thing about this yeast is that it has a lot of phenolics. I get a lot of pepper in the nose. You also get some fruit characteristics and a little bit of light banana. And the fruit is kind of like an apricot skin. Maybe a touch of green apple. But definitely banana. Touch of breadiness from the malt. Not too much coming as far as floral from the hops. Not a lot of effervescence in the nose there either. Let's give it a taste. So this is kind of a cross between, I would say, like a Belgian and a Saison. It has a little bit of isoamyl acetate, the banana ester. Not a whole lot, but it's there. But it has a really big pepper phenolic, and that's what really kind of sets this yeast apart, I think, is that pepper phenolic. Now, when I drank it young, the banana was more pronounced. As the beer is starting to age, that's kind of turning into what I describe as like a slightly underripe apricot, kind of a fruit character to it. The side carbonation is medium-high, good for the style, for pale ale, Belgian pale ale. The other thing that's unique about this yeast is that it seems to be, I think, maybe a high glycerol producer. Some of that body might be coming. The beer has like a medium-high body to it, really nice body. Part of that might be coming from the flaked barley that I use, but I think that it might also maybe be coming from the yeast in the form of glycerol. The pepper note is right there from the beginning all the way to the end, kind of lingers in the back a little bit. The beer is got a little bit of a sweetness to it on the mid side of the palate. It's probably from the honey malt. Otherwise, it dries out pretty well on the aftertaste, kind of leaving that pepper note, a little bit of the apricot lingering as well. The other thing about this beer is that it has a little bit of a fusel alcohol aspect to it. I don't know if that's because of how I brewed it. It could be. I pitched, I think it was an 800 milliliter starter. The yeast was a little bit older, maybe about I don't know, 4 or 5 months after he sent it. So I don't think it was expired or anything. It definitely probably wasn't in its prime. I also forgot to aerate the wort, because I normally don't do that. I normally make sour beers and I don't bother doing it. So I forgot to do that. So that could have stressed the yeast maybe a little bit. I fermented it at 70 degrees, so maybe pitching a little bit higher, maybe fermenting a couple degrees lower might help with the fusel alcohols. This kind of a yeast, which I would characterize kind of it as a Belgian yeast, you really have to play with those fermentation profile, those variables, temperature control, pitch rate, aeration, those types of things. Overall, I think the beer turned out really good. I would like to play with the recipe and the yeast, maybe to really dial it in. I think the yeast has a lot of potential. I think it will also have a lot of potential, not just on its own, but also in a blend with Brettanomyces, especially if that mouthfeel is coming from glycerol. I think it would and with the pepper notes and the esters, I think it would pair real well with the Brettanomyces in a blend there. So thanks so much, David, for sending this to me. I would highly suggest that you guys keep an eye out for Southyeast Labs. If you go to signup.southeast.com, you can sign up for their newsletter. They should be opening for business hopefully in January, he told me, 2016. So soon he should be offering some of his wild yeasts. I've also used his blend, his farmhouse ale sour blend, and it turned out fantastic. I might do a separate review on it, I'm not too sure, but I highly recommend trying that for like a tart, even a Goza or a Berliner Weiss. It turned out really, really good, real lemony, not a lot of sulfur and yogurt. There might have been a hint of a yogurt character to it, but really, really lemony, really subtly complex. And so I'm really looking forward to what David can produce for us. Really looking forward to using more of his cultures as well. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching, and thanks again, Dave Thornton, for sending me this. It was an honor to be part of your beta test. Cheers.